Republican Senator Tommy Tuberville has single-handedly for 6 months been blocking crucial military promotions, prompting military leaders to condemn him, saying that he's aiding and abetting communists and autocrats and weakening America's national security. But before we unpack all that, if you haven't yet, please hit that like, subscribe, and the alert bell. Maybe check out my Patreon. I'd appreciate the support. All right, folks, so for decades, the Republican Party has claimed to be the party of family values, the party of Jesus Christ, and the pro-military party. They say that they care about the military, they care about our troops, even though a careful review of their policy decisions and their legislative priorities indicate that that's obviously not the case. And if you need any further example of it, look no further than the actions for the past half of a year, almost at a year and a half of a year, feels like a year and a half, of one Republican Senator, Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. So I'm sure you've been hearing about it in the news. We're going to do just a brief overview, and then I have several clips I want to play because the backlash that Tuberville is getting from otherwise typically stoic, reserved military leaders who try to remain above politics, even they're stepping in and saying Tuberville is going crazy, okay? But for context, this is an LA Times breakdown of the situation. The U.S. military is one of the few American institutions that still reliably receives bipartisan support in Congress. Both parties are eager to demonstrate their commitment to the defense apparatus, brag about military leaders' nominations, yada, yada. But one GOP senator recently capsized this tradition by successfully holding up a slate of President Biden's military nominations. His reason? Abortion access. As of late August, 301 military nominations were on hold, including 14 positions based in California, because, of course, this is the LA Times, so it's crucial to them. So it breaks it down. So in the aftermath of the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade and the Dobbs decision, patients were left to figure out when and where they could get access to abortion. Because some states have banned pregnancy termination completely and access has not changed in others, many patients were forced to travel if they want to obtain an abortion. So the Defense Department has service members who are often bound to specific bases in specific states, and many of them are women, and many of them may need access to an abortion. The Department of Defense crafted a policy to help service members and their families sidestep any restrictions that might exist in their states. The Pentagon in February said it would grant leave and reimburse service members and their families when they have to travel to access reproductive care, including abortion. To be very clear, the Defense Department is not going to pay for abortions. It's just going to grant leave and reimburse the travel expense if you have to travel to get an abortion. That is a crucial, meaningful difference. Now, of course, the GOP was furious about it, but the Justice Department says that the policy is legal. So that's the context. That's the trigger. And in response, Tommy Tuberville says, okay, well, I'm blocking all of President Biden's military promotions until the Defense Department rescinds that policy, okay? And this happened 6 months ago. So with that in mind, I want to turn your attention to some clips here because we actually have former members of the military and current members of the military in leadership positions, like secretaries of the Air Force and the Army, et cetera, and so forth, coming out and publicly condemning Tommy Tuberville and saying that, look, by doing what he's doing, he is weakening national security and the Defense Department and the military, and he's aiding and abetting communists and autocrats. So we'll play the clip, and we will unpack it when we're done. The clips.
I'm forgiving for someone who's born in a communist country. I would have never imagined that actually one of our own senators would actually be aiding and abetting communist and other autocratic regimes around the world. This is having a real negative impact and will continue to have a real negative impact on our combat readiness. And that's what the American people truly need to understand.
And that's Carlos Del Toro, the Secretary of the Navy. This is one of the highest ranking positions you can have in the Defense Department. He's saying that Tommy Tuberville, by holding up these crucial appointments, he's aiding and abetting communists and autocrats around the world who want to see American military supremacy and American hegemony overthrown. So Tommy Tuberville is in fact aiding the enemy in the opinion of the military. We'll go on to another example.
First of all, we are safe and we are prepared, but what Senator Tuberville is doing significant damage to our national security. He has put on hold, as you said, hundreds of officers. Each summer, we move a large fraction of our general officers into new positions. We promote many of them. Right now, that is all in limbo. So we have acting people basically serving in roles, in many cases doing more than one job at the same time, because we can't move the person that we've nominated into that position. It's having a major impact on those people and on their families. Prepare. But
So that's Frank Kendall, the Secretary of the Air Force. So again, he concurs with Carlos del Toro, the Secretary of the Navy, that again, Tommy Tuberville is having a one-man impact, probably to a greater extent than anybody, certainly even compared to Russia. Tommy Tuberville is weakening America military preparedness and military readiness by holding up these crucial positions because he protests a perfectly legal policy within the Department of Defense. But again, even there's more than that. This is a former four-star general and Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, which is a pretty cool title, Wesley Clark. Okay, so this is an ex-military officer, someone who is a veteran of the United States military, and this is what he has to say on the matter.
Well, Kate, I'm very glad to see the current secretary speaking out. I think this hold is very damaging. We have seen holds in the past on individual officers' promotions, but this is something entirely different. This is a wholesale hold on the normal summertime rotation and retirement that happens at the top of the armed forces. It's extremely damaging. And it's damaging not only because of the hold, but also for the reason behind it. Because we're really bringing in domestic politics in such a strong way, into this military arena. The military is non-political. We serve the commander-in-chief, whoever he is, whatever party or she is.
So again, I mean, there's a pretty clear consensus here. I want to go back to real quick the hold or the LA Times article as well. So because the Secretary of the Air Force mentioned in the second clip that this is having a material impact on military families as well, right? And so the LA Times article describes it. Tuberville's 300-plus holds have had a ripple effect throughout the military, including forcing at least 25 officers to delay their retirements, which is cruel. And in July, 600 military spouses gave Tuberville and Senate leaders a petition lobbying for the end of the blockade. And actually, as a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, and I'm going to do a search here, I think the Marine Corps, for the first time, right there, perfect. The vacancies that need to be filled, but can't be filled because of Tuberville's blanket ban or blanket blockade on military promotions. The vacancies include leaders for 3 of the 5 military branches: the Marine Corps, Navy, and the Army. Okay, in extraordinary rebuke, the Secretaries for Navy, Air Force, and Army admonished the senator in an op-ed, calling his hold dangerous and said it put national security at risk. So again, 3 of the 5 service branches in the U.S. Armed Forces are currently leaderless, all right? And even putting like the acting commandant of the Marine Corps, for example, there are legal limits to their authority in terms of if the difference between an acting leader and a fully confirmed Senate leader. There are limits to what an acting leader can do in these situations. So even just promoting like a temporary active or acting leader, it doesn't solve the problem. Tuberville's hold is having a material impact. Now, the last clip I want to play, because it's so funny. In response to all this legitimate, substantive backlash that Tuberville is getting from current and former military leaders who are nonpartisan, who served Republicans and Democrats, who served President Biden and Donald Trump, and probably Barack Obama and George Bush, et cetera, and so forth, as well as their spouses and their families. This concerted, heated backlash, which is 100% justified and for which he has no defense. This is how Tuberville responded.
Firm to go ahead and take additional positions. The Navy Secretary just told our Jake Tapper that the hold...
This is not Tuberville, by the way. This is the Defense Department spokesperson. His last name is Kirby, but they're going to play a clip of Tuberville and how he has addressed the response, the criticism that he's been getting.
Aids and abets U.S. adversaries, namely China. Tuberville just responded. Listen to this.
I'm disappointed that a secretary would say that about a senator. And he sat in this very office when he was going up for confirmation himself. And just makes you feel bad that we got leaders in the country like that. Because as I just told you, if I thought it was hurting readiness, I wouldn't be doing this, but it's not.
See, I'll point this out, not that it matters. It shouldn't matter. I'm not a veteran. I never served in the armed forces, but neither did Tuberville. But here's what's hilarious is Tuberville is substituting his own assessment as a non-veteran political officer, a senator, right? Somebody who's not even in the civilian chain of command of the military. He's not the president. He's not the Secretary of Defense. So he has, not only does he have no authority in this respect and no real experience with the military, he never has. And he's saying, listen, all the secretaries of the Navy and the Air Force and the Army and this former 4-star general and all the military spouses, all these people, they don't know what they're talking about. They're saying that it affects national security, all these national security experts. But I, Tommy Tuberville, former football coach who never served in the military, I know better than they do. I think they're wrong. So otherwise, I wouldn't do it. And it's an absolutely ridiculous position to take. He is not in a position. He is certainly in a position of power, clearly, to hold up the nominations. That is a power that he holds and he's abusing. But in terms of his expertise, he doesn't have any. So nobody cares what you have to say, Tommy. You're irrelevant.
It's concerning that you got people that are in secretary positions like that would say something like that in our country instead of getting on the phone and calling me.
What's your reaction?
So he's whining that they have publicly condemned him for doing this public act of defiance, which is weakening the military, national security for 6 months. He's been publicly grandstanding in a way that has materially harmed the U.S. military for 6 months, and he's complaining, well, why didn't you just call me? Why are you publicly criticizing my public actions? It's pathetic. But this is what John Kirby, the Defense Department spokesperson, had to say in response to that.
Reaction to what the senator said.
Well, my best advice to the senators, if you don't like being criticized for this outrageous effort to hold up these promotions and advancements, then lift your hold. If it bothers you that we're publicly talking about the impacts it's having, and it is having an impact, then just lift the hold.
Right. It's really that simple. So again, what we're seeing here is the fact of the matter is, we talked about this before, the current iteration of the Republican Party is not only the greatest political threat to this country, and it is factually, nobody can argue effectively to the contrary. We're going to cover in another video how they also pose an existential threat to not only this country, but the planet as a whole with their effects on, or their takes on climate change, even recently. But they're also arguably the greatest threat to national security that we face. Like even our foreign adversaries like Russia and China right now are not directly acting in ways against the military. Tommy Tuberville's actions are having a more direct and immediate impact on weakening national defense, national security, and the military than anything being done by China and Russia that we're aware of. So you could easily make the case that this Republican senator, and by extension the Republican Party surrounding him for failing to keep him in check, to get him to stop the hold, the GOP is arguably the single greatest military threat to the health and safety and prosperity of the United States. So hardly the actions and rhetoric of a pro-military party. Once again, the GOP demonstrates that they are failures on something that they claim to value. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So let me know what you think in the comments.